Hello everyone. Today we're here with Dr. Radhika Rituri. She's the Vice President at Gods. And today we're going to be asking her 15 questions as usual and then our one normal question. So thank you so much for coming in today. I hope you're doing great. So let's get started. So question number one, as you can see on the screen, what physiological factors can certain individuals lead to certain individuals craving specific foods such as sweets or salts or even spicy during menstruation?
Right. Hi. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and I hope the little conversation we have is going to benefit people around who listen to this, channel of yours. And my answer to the question that you've asked me, that menstruation is something which is hormonally dependent. There are going to be a lot of fluctuations in the hormones. A female undergoes, there are phases of the menstrual cycle. There is a follicular phase, there's an ovarian phase, there's a ovarian cycle, a menstrual cycle. So, therefore, the ups and downs, the regulations that are there in the menses can affect our neurotransmitters such as serotonin, which is a major mood elevator. So sometimes, when we are in our menstrual phases, there can be, lower drops of serotonin levels, which can have us to have cravings for carbohydrates. And sorry, I got a call. Which can have cravings in carbohydrates. One can want to have sweets, one would want to have fried, or sometimes even crave for salty food. So this is one biochemical reason. Second, people may dislike me for saying this, but I think a lot of social media has put out comfort food, labeled junk, which people say are period comforting food, and I totally disagree. A good, wholesome, handy homemade meal can be equally comforting if you compare it to a McDonald's or a KFC burger or a choco lava cake. It's a question of release of endorphins. It's a question of your comfort. So I feel one should have simpler foods which are easy to digest on the stomach, because anyways your uterine lining is being shed. Your hormones are at your lowest possible. The brain is still trying to communicate with the uterus and the ovaries in order to function properly. So yes, food cravings are real, but I think we need to normalize the foods that we eat. Cheating once in a while, I think it's absolutely okay for anybody, any age.
Okay, that's amazing to hear. That's extremely insightful. All right, so let's move on to the second question. Can significant changes in daily routine, such as stress or travel or light exercise, travel temporarily alter one's menstrual cycle? And I also want to add to this, for example, sometimes when the weather changes or something like that, and for example, it's becoming extremely cold where we live right now. So can that also affect my menstrual cycle?
I would put weather question at the end, but yes, our travel, our sleep patterns, our food habits, even to the add to that, yes, will alter our menstruation. A lot of stress, anxiety can cause delayed menstruation. The stress of travel, traveling odd hours, you're taking a flight early in the morning, reaching the airport 2 hours before. So yes, these things, because they affect the hypothalamo pituitary axis, which is majorly responsible to coordinate from the brain end, from the hypothalamic end, with the uterus, with the ovaries, to align these. So our brain is a very sensitive organ. When we are happy, there are happy hormones, there are endorphins which is released. So our conditional reflexes to even stressful situations can be very different. In a similar setup, when you may be very upset and you may come across a similar problem which you may have faced earlier because of high cortisol levels due to stress, your reaction will again vary. So mood changes definitely will alter cycles. Not for everybody. There is always a variation. There'll be people irrespective of variation will have normal periods, but it is not unlikely to see people under stress, under anxiety, exam stress, for them to have irregular cycles.
Okay.
A lot of people doing night shifts, especially. We come across a lot of people who are working for US companies. They're daily doing night shifts from 7 in the evening till about 4 in the morning. They're skipping dinners. So their permanent cortisol levels are under stress. You're not sleeping, your sleep hormones are disrupted. So that can lead to irregular cycles, for sure.
Okay, all right. Question number three. Does engaging in physical activity such as swimming or light exercise, for example, yoga, alleviate or exacerbate menstrual cramps?
Not at all. It's on the contrary, in fact, that any exercise you do will increase your body metabolic rate, your basal metabolic rate, and it'll release endorphins, which are the happy hormones. They say eat a chocolate and endorphin will be released. So, equivalent, a good run, swimming, exercise, cycling, walking, yoga will definitely get you calm down and help you, fight with the pain much better. Of course, my point of differentiation here is there may be genuinely people who may have uterine ovarian diseases. They may have endometriosis, they may have fibroids, they may have some pathological condition, in which case the pain would not be relieved on just walking or exercising. So, to differentiate whether it is pain due to a physiological reason, that I don't have an organic pathology lesion, and then these things would be very helpful. And if unfortunately someone is experiencing these symptoms and by doing these activities still feels that the pain is unbearable, it is debilitating you to a level where you cannot carry your ordinary activities day to day, then yes, one must look out and seek for help.
All right. Okay, that's great to hear. All right. Next question. At what point does menstrual pain move beyond the range of normal discomfort and warrant medical evaluation?
So pain is again a very subjective
Hmm.
symptom. I'm sure you resemble, there is a smiley pain scale.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are angry red smileys and there are
Yeah.
yellow
Yeah.
nice
Absolutely.
smileys. So, one, I would say it depends on how sensitive, how emotional a person you are in terms of your somatic pain.
Mm-hmm.
That there are people who are even at the sight of the needle can really fret you and scare you and, kind of give you jitters and jitters. So, we have to identify our pain threshold, number one. According to that, the pain that we describe in menses relates to what we can do daily. Normally, I get up, I, go to the washroom, freshen up, get ready, have breakfast, go to work, and I have a normal routine a day which I can function properly. Supposing in my menses, if these activities, daily activities become difficult, you're unable to perform these routinely activities, you can't sit properly, you can't stand, or whatever your jobs are, you can't eat, you're puking, then yes, this is considered abnormal. So, there may be 10 people, 10 girls who may be menstruating the same day, but all 10 may be exhibiting different
Different pains.
features and functions. There are people who even end up having syncopal fainting attacks. So, identify your comfort zone, identify what you cannot do or you were doing as a routine activity and you can't during menses. Simple foods, elevating foods may help some people, and if it doesn't, uh, communication is very important.
Yeah. Reach out to.
Start talking to someone,
Mm-hmm.
whoever, start with at least person A, so that somebody can at least tell you what is normal, what is not.
Mm-hmm.
And today we have many platforms where girls can reach out. You may still keep your name anonymous and
Yeah.
still put out questions and be there. But one basic key is communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's very true.
Don't just rot yourself alone, thinking of the best and worst possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's great to hear. That's very insightful. All right. Next question: what underlying mechanisms lead to dizziness or nausea during menstruation in some individuals?
So whenever we get our periods, basically the uterus is a small little organ which is made up of muscular
Yeah.
tissue, right? And then there are the tubes, the fallopian tubes, which are the ova carriers, and then the ovary. So the fact that you are getting your periods, you're getting down, you're getting your charms, is that the lining, the innermost lining of the endometrium, which is known as endometrium of the uterus, is what which is being shed. So when it is being shed, there is a slight contraction of the uterus. During that contraction, during the periods, there is a chemical substance known as prostaglandin which is released. That is responsible for majority of the pain triggers. There is a little contraction, there is a slight prostaglandin release, so that causes pain, it causes nausea. Sorry, that causes pain, it causes nausea, it can cause bodily dysfunctions. People may roll up in pain, people may have leg cramps. So
Mm-hmm.
these are things which can happen.
Okay. Next question. Can the choice of menstrual product, pad, tampon, or menstrual cup affect comfort, hygiene, or perceived flow?
Again, that is subjective person to person. I feel today we're in an era, we're very lucky that we have a lot of choice of period products. Of course, when we get our periods, we're about 11, 12, 13. We are not very wary of the world. We haven't identified our bodies very well, the path. So I would say for beginners, simple sanitary pads,
Yeah.
for them to at least start, understand using them, be comfortable in moving around. Um a little older, maybe at an age where you feel you're an adult, virginity can slash be considered plus minus, then tampons, menstrual cups will definitely be more easier, keeping people freer. You may be able to do your athletics better, your swimming, your cycling better, which I feel can be done in sanitary pads as well. But now that we have a basket approach, we have things which are available. I feel putting information out correctly first, tell people these are your options, start with A, because only if I've had a dark chocolate will I know how different it is from a normal chocolate.
Yeah.
I have to have a basic knowledge and idea of what I'm using, what are its, repercussions, what are its pros and cons. And hygiene, I feel, is always a must. Irrespective of whatever product you use, menstrual
Maintain.
hygiene
Ex-
must be maintained. And another very important point for our generation, we should learn how to dispose our period products
yeah.
properly.
Yeah, I've noticed this. Girls
या
kind of
अपने
have.
घरों में हम बहुत साफ सफाई रखते हैं. The minute we enter public spaces, I don't know why we feel that people, toilet cleaners or mall cleaners are the ones responsible for it.
Yeah. I've seen
So
like, people just leave their pads into the bins without rolling them up. It's
don't
disgusting.
flush them. Number one thing I'll say, please don't flush them. That's part of menstrual hygiene. And we should be responsible that whatever product we are using, we people are promoting menstrual cups because of sustainability. But even that, at a point of time when you want to change it, you don't just throw it away.
Yeah.
Please read. The box comes with instructions. The pads come with instructions. So, knowledge A to Z. Half knowledge is dangerous for all of us in any sphere.
Yeah, that's very important. All right, next question. How does hydration influence symptoms like bloating, fatigue, and overall menstrual well being?
Absolutely. Somebody who's menstruating, a lot of 50% of people have bloating, people have cramps, people have belching. They're again due to prostaglandins, the fluctuating levels of estrogen, progesterone. So, one, eating lighter foods, eating home cooked meals, lighter digestive stuff, more water, hydrate yourself very well. That will really give you a lot of, it'll boost your BP, it'll keep your, tissues well hydrated. पुराने जमाने में लोगों को गुड़ और अजवाइन दिया जाता था.
Hmm.
Ajwain was for bloating and good because it has iron. You're losing out blood. It's a form of loss of iron from the body. So simpler products were easy. So now I would say that yes, have a little iron rich diet when you're menstruating. That'll take care of your basic minimalistic iron loss. You have over the counter supplements like Digene, Pudin Hara, Amritdhara. You can have basic painkillers if required, if somebody falls under the category of having some diseases. You may, if you're dehydrated, it may worsen your cramps. You may be all swelled up. Your mouth may be very dry. So please eat. You may not be able to eat your usual amount like you
Yeah.
eat on any other day, but the glucose levels of the body have to be maintained because if you're hungry, then even your
Yeah.
pain bearing capacity will go
Will
down.
go down. Okay. All right. Okay. Next question. What hormonal changes contribute to mood swings or emotional sensitivity during the menstrual cycle?
When we have a particular phase, the luteal phase, there is, where the follicle is about to rupture and, the ovulation is about to happen. So, there the estrogen progesterone levels will drop. There'll be a sudden surge and then there'll be a drop. That will again lead to fluctuations in serotonin. The serotonin can be less, there can be less endorphins. So, these are reasons why we may have mood fluctuations. But again, I'm saying this, it is normal for people to have, women to have
Mood swings.
difference of opinion. It is normal for women to have mood swings. We are more sensitive. We function in a different way. So to just put the entire blame of, like there are people who are insensitive and say it's one of those days, then you please, take a back seat.
Yeah.
So I feel it is being used way more frequently than it actually happens. And people assume that if you're down, you will have fluctuations. I don't think it's true for all.
It doesn't happen all the time, like,
It
spikes.
doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if it does happen, there is a absolutely logical biochemical reason for it to happen. And people who feel that they may have, if they actually feel a difference in their behavior during periods and pre and post after that, I'm sure we can engage in a lot of breathing exercises, basic stretching, yoga, breathing patterns, so that it calms you down. We all know if we get angry, how our body behaves to cope us down back to get us. Supposing I get angry on a thing,
Hmm.
then I know, even if I have an anger outburst, then I know what follows next and how to get myself back on track. So if we realize that, I think that will also be very helpful for ladies to acknowledge that yes, it may happen. If it does, then set a protocol for it to at least try and combat it. It may happen once, twice, thrice, but then eventually you have a certain, stepway to kind of get over it and sometimes even evade the situation.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. All right, next question. Can chronic stress suppress or delay menstruation, and what biological
Absolutely.
processes are involved?
Absolutely. If there is a lot of stress, your hormones will go haywire, your insulin levels will vary because insulin is again a stress hormone. There will be, the hormone which is responsible for the ovarian development. There is something known as the GnRH. The estrogen will not be released properly. There'll be irregularities in progesterone level. So because of this, again, the mechanism, the trigger going back to the brain, the hypothalamic area, to the pituitary area, will be irregular. There will be irregular beats going. So therefore, there will be a cycle of irregular pattern.
Oh, okay, all
And
right.
like I said, we are talking of stress. So stress has its somatic features. You may not want to sleep, or you may oversleep. You may not eat on time. You may skip your meals. So these are things which, it is never one plus one is two. It's a series. It's a vicious cycle. It'll lead to one change will lead to another, and therefore the whole criteria.
Okay. Next question. Are irregular menstrual cycles always indicative of underlying hormonal or metabolic imbalance?
Depends on the age of the patient that we're talking in. This is a question which can be answered differently for people with different ages. So, if there's a young 12, 13-year-old girl who's just got her chums, she may not start getting it every month. Her body may still take a little time to
Adapt.
get in track and get the cycle back into shape. Against a child of 12, 13, 14 who's got periods, who's morbidly obese, the obesity will be the reason of irregularity, not exactly the pure ovarian hormones or the uterine hormones. The the middle generation, say about 18 to 30, we would say yes, if someone really has irregular hormones, we could put it that, the hormonal imbalance could be because of hormones being haywire and not being in track. When you reach perimenopause, that is again a different segment where eventually, gradually, you may stop having your periods.
Irregular periods. Okay.
So every irregular cycle cannot be PCOD or cannot be just y- normal irregularity. There may be thyroid abnormalities associated because the pituitary is controlling the thyroid gland. You may be lactating, you may be pregnant, you may be breastfeeding, and even these are reasons why period can be irregular. So what age you're in, what are your environmental factors, what is your marital status, have you taken any abortifacient pills, have you taken any over the counter eye pills, these are all questions which need to be taken into account. So
Okay.
one has to have a proper history. That is why I repeat my statement, communicate. Have the courage to go to a gynecologist, talk, because these days we are not judging each other. Everyone is sitting here to help people. And you may have bad experiences. Everyone has good or bad, experiences at all levels, but don't stop communicating. If you are not satisfied with one, move on to another. There are online platforms, there are offline platforms. So ask questions, because once you hear answers, you will be able to relate and understand what is happening and why.
Okay. All right, next question. How can one differentiate between common premenstrual syndrome, PMS, and premenstrual dysphoric disorder, PMDD?
So basically, when we talk of the premenstrual syndrome, usually it's very mild. In some cases, maybe moderate. There can be fluctuations in emotions, mood sensitivity, pain, cramping. But you may always find your way back to normalcy. You may have spurts of these. When we talk of a dysphoric disorder, then definitely the word dysphoric and disorder immediately multiplies the symptoms. It impairs your physical ability, it impairs your mental cognitive balance, and then the differentiation between normal and abnormal, correct and incorrect, is lost. So it includes a lot of neurotransmitter disturbances, which again can have multiple triggers. Dysmorphic disorder doesn't happen in one night. You will exhibit certain, off track symptoms. You will have certain behavioral symptoms which you may not notice, but people around you may
May
notice.
notice. Okay. All right, next question. What causes radiating pain in areas such as the lower back or thighs during menstruation?
So, our uterus and ovary is in the pelvic area, right? In the lower abdominal area. And when we talk of the blood supply, the nerve supply, pain is related to the nervous system. It's a sensory, sensation. So, the nerve supply of few areas is common. There are certain areas which is called, it's a neuropathic pain, where pain, certain areas have a common nervous supply. And I may have a toothache which may go to the ear, because this is a common area of the nerve supplying. So therefore the lower abdomen, the umbilical area, the inner thighs, the glutes, or even the thigh muscles are usual areas of cramps. And one another certain area, a lot of people have breast discomfort. A lot of people end up having breast cramps. People start
Hmm.
having ping pricking sensations
Yeah.
premenstrually, menstrually. So that is because prolactin is a hormone related through the HPO axis of the menstruation. Breast has nothing to do with the common nerve supply.
Okay.
Breast has to do with the hormonal coordination you have. So it's usually the nerve supply of that area which affects.
Related. Okay. All right. Next question I have for you. What are the potential long-term effects of frequent analgesic use for menstrual pain management?
It can cause you gastric symptoms. You may have gastritis. You may develop chronic acidity. Your pain threshold may just decrease in person, because, at the drop of a hat, if you're taking painkillers and you're not trying to do any natural remedies, your diet intake may be poor, because constant analgesic use can decrease. It can have loss of appetite. And again, which will lead to micronutrient deficiencies, dehydration again.
Yeah.
Any analgesic that you take orally will affect your liver, your kidneys.
Consequences.
So you can have organ damages. So sorry.
It's okay.
You can have organ damages. Uh, Also, in general, the immunity that one has
Yeah, it'll lower down because.
will definitely wither and fall with time.
Hmm.
Like I said, pathologies which are causing excessive pain are an entirely different discussion. Then again, it's on your basic need. If your body has a certain dysfunction, then to supplement you accordingly, if you really need those painkillers, is different. But otherwise, we need to motivate our girls to be a little more active during menstruation. You may not be doing very heavy exercises,
But
but
just like
simple
light
stretching,
stretching or
yoga.
yoga, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then micronutrients like vitamin D, B12, D, all of these are iron deficiencies. These are very commonly associated with menstruation disorders.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, these are micronutrients which people don't really consider much.
Yeah.
When we are our younger selves, we have much more potential to bear pain or bear foreign substances and have junk and get away with. But in your late 30s, late 40s, the same habits will be very, very unfruitful for the same person.
Okay. Our next question is, I feel we've covered this, so we're not, I'll just say it out loud. In what ways might environmental or dietary factors influence menstrual health and hormonal regulation? If you'd like to answer it, we can go ahead, but I feel like you've already covered this, so
We
we
can
okay.
skip it.
Yeah, we can skip this. All right. What is the okay? Yeah, this one is a little reflective. What is a widely believed misconception about menstruation that medical evidence disproves, and something you want your patients to know that this is not true? Something you deal with in your practice.
I don't know how many people will agree with me. I'm somebody who's a very practical person, and I feel that number one, I'm a very religious person, core at heart. I feel that putting a taboo to people going to temples or praying,
It's wrong.
it's wrong. Like I said, the social belief, people, you may not want to go to a temple because of various reasons. I wouldn't want to indulge in that public platform, but the inner peace and the sanctity and the right to think of God and to pray to God during your menses should remain with one.
Obviously.
So yes, there are no religious taboos. Second, people say one shouldn't have a bath, one should be living separately, you
Yeah.
shouldn't indulge with people, don't talk to people, just shoo and sit down in a quiet corner, don't tell the whole world or whole house that you're down.
Hmm.
I feel no, that gives, because you're undergoing hormonal disturbances, your levels of hormones may be dropping, you may be experiencing depressive symptoms. Depression is a very strong word, but you may be just very low, like you may be very slug, you just may not want to do. So somebody's good pep conversation will always help you.
Hmm.
And third, I think gone are those days when we used to go to the market and, wrap the
Yeah.
STs into a
I.
black paper and, quietly take it. I feel it's a natural phenomena. uh, People who have girls and boys should educate their kids equally. Your
That's very
boy
true.
will become someone's husband,
Hmm.
and to have somebody emotionally comforting you in that zone, I think
Very
it's
important.
more than any girl can ask for.
Yeah.
You can't change the way you function, but just somebody, tapping your shoulder or just telling you it's okay, I'm here if you need out something, just shout out. So I feel these are myths and facts which need to change, and uh, communicate
Yeah.
is the key for any problem I feel in life. So,
Yeah.
be it menstruation or anything.
All right. Okay, this is the last question, and we ask this to all of our doctors. Everybody has different opinions on this, so feel free to just like put your heart and soul into this or something. So, what would you like to say to a little girl who's just started her periods? What are your tips? What are your suggestions?
Uh, you're beautiful inside out. Don't let puberty change you. Change is a constant process we need to accept gracefully. Periods are absolutely natural, they are healthy. Eat well, be happy, have faith in yourself. Don't give anybody the power to belittle you because of the fact that you're getting down. It's a proud moment, it should
Yeah.
be celebrated. One should be happy about the whole idea of stepping into a fertile zone, of accepting your body, and just don't shy out. Don't let the crowd dull you down. Like I always use this phrase to cheer up so many of my friends, that princess chin up or the crown is going to fall.
Yeah.
So don't let it fall. And I want to tell girls also that they always say it's bro code. I always say it's girl gang and
Yeah.
girl power. So
Okay.
we must keep that alive.
Alright, thank you so much for coming here today. We really loved your
My pleasure.
insights, and yeah, I think this was a very nice interview. One of the best I've actually done. I'm not gonna lie. So thank you
Very
so
kind of
much
you.
for coming on. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.